it's not just the standard vehicles to be seen. There are Land Rovers of all shapes and sizes here. But while it's the luxury Range Rover which has enjoyed the greatest recent success, an increasing number of the old series vehicles are also being given a new lease of life. This growing interest in Land Rovers is perhaps most noticeable in New England, and one of the most popular areas of all is in the northern state of Maine, close to the Canadian border. All types of vehicles make the journey here, from some of the oldest and rarest in the country to some of the most radically modified in the world. The Down East Rally was started at the end of the 1980s by Miles Murphy, a passionate Land Rover owner who emigrated to America from Ireland. He had the idea of a summer get-together for the Northeast die-hard owners, and the event has been growing larger every year since. The event reflects the transformation Land Rover has enjoyed in America in recent years. Initially, sales were very limited. In fact, as only about 15,000 Land Rovers were sold in the US between the end of the 1940s up till 1974, exports were terminated. But in 1987, the company returned to America, and their subsequent success means many of these older vehicles, as well as the newer models, are now much more sought after. As at all Land Rover shows, one of the main attractions is the off-road course. Few of these owners worry about their vehicles getting a few scratches, and certainly no one cares about getting a thorough soaking.
My first Land Rover memory was driving his Land Rover down this almost sheer cliff with goats chasing us and partridge running in front of me.
But you loved it?
But I loved it.
Vermont, I said to him, I want one of those. Never knew the price of it, and so our dream came true.
That is the way it's done.
Maine's constantly changing weather means that there are plenty of muddy trails in the area to test the full versatility of the Land Rovers.
Everybody turns around and admires the Land Rover, and some people don't know the year of it. This is a 61. They think it's a brand new one.
Well, I think it's a Jeep.
Yeah, a lot of people do think it's a Jeep.
Yeah, well, I think it's a Jeep.
Not content with tackling the course one way, some owners have a second go in the reverse direction. Even the monster-sized forward control vehicles get around the tough course.
The women love it. It was the best car in the world, though. Great.
But the Down East Rally is not all hard work. There's as much partying as playing in the mud.
What we're at is one of the most unique and unusual American Land Rover gatherings. Certainly this is the largest Land Rover event that's been held in this country. And the beauty of this weekend, this Down East weekend, is the complete spontaneity with which it was created. I drive my Land Rover every day, and I use it daily throughout the northern part of New England. And if I see 1 or 2 Land Rovers a week, I'm thrilled. So I arrive to the Down East event here in Mid-Coast, Maine, and I suddenly see 135 Land Rovers wending their way through the woods. And I look at the license plates and see that people have come from all over the East Coast of the United States for this one event. And they come on a holiday weekend. This is, of course, our Independence Day weekend. And they've sort of made this and folded this into the sort of spontaneous event that our July 4th celebrations often are. This kind of off-road event is rarely held with this many. A similar Canadian event that's much loved had 70 cars, which is terrific turnout. If you ever had 50 cars at an off-road event, you're thrilled. To have 135 cars show up, most of which did the off-road course, from the oldest of a Series 1, an 80-inch Series 1 that came all the way up from Maryland, to an original Range Rover, I think it was a 71 Range Rover, all the way to the brand new U.S. spec vehicles, come and drive the course. Many people for the first time. It was really quite an experience.
It's day 2 of the weekend, and despite the arduous endeavours and heavy partying the day before, many owners are up early to get a prime spot at the main showground. The destination is the famous Owl's Head Transportation Museum, just a few miles from the small resort town of Camden. For one day a year, these quiet country lanes in southern Maine are dominated by Land Rovers of all ages. Here, the vehicles are displayed aside a range of aircraft and other military transportation. A stealth bomber even pays a visit. Local clubs always have a presence here, but the main highlight of the show is the chance for everyone to view the full range of vehicles in the growing Land Rover family, from the early vehicles of the 1950s to the latest models in the showroom today.
This is my first Land Rover rally, and it's a fantastic experience. I walked the track yesterday, got mud up to my knees, and maybe next year I'll be on that track.
The Land Rover enthusiast in America is a pretty die-hard person, maybe pound for pound as die-hard as any in the world. And the fact that we have to drive 2,000 miles perhaps to attend an event, well, that's just the way it goes, and we'll do whatever we have to do. We'll schedule our vacation time, we'll throw the kids in the back of the Series 2A and the dog, and we'll drive there. And that's kind of the attitude we've had all along.
We've got 200 plus Land Rovers here, most of which drove a long way to get here. I'm one of the ones that, I only came 10 miles, but there's a car right next to me came from Minnesota. I mean, that's like coming from Moscow to London.
Now in the last few years, with the reintroduction of Land Rover into North America, you're seeing a great resurgence in interest in these vehicles. Where a few years ago you might have an event that would draw half a dozen Land Rovers, you're now having rallies like the Down East here that's drawing over 200 Land Rovers.
The wild and largely untouched landscape of Maine meant that this was one of the most popular states for Land Rover sales in the 1950s and 60s. But with many of the older vehicles having been abandoned for many years, a dedicated restoration company called East Coast Rovers has recently been acquiring as many as it can find, with the aim of getting them back on the road. Mike Smith is co-owner.
We actually do go and we will buy Land Rovers for people because a lot of our clients that call up don't have a Land Rover yet and they want us to supply them with the start-off vehicle and then do all the work. So they'll call up and spec out what they want and we'll have to go find it. So we have bought some. This is one of the ones that we've purchased. We got a call from one of our advertisements, a gentleman who runs a junkyard. And we went down and he said he had an old Series 2 Land Rover that was for sale. And then we just take a run in the car carrier and go look at it and bought it. And then it turned out once we started researching this one, we traced the main plates and everything, and it has a pretty interesting history. It was bought new in Upper Canada. It was actually taken all the way down whatever roads there were at the time, I guess when it was new, through Mexico and through Brazil. And we have a little funny story about it that it has some damage to it on the side and on the rear corners and stuff because it actually rolled over and it was told to us that it actually rolled over in Brazil while they're on expedition. Rolled over and I guess they righted it and kept going and brought it all the way back. Served them well for their expedition, but then it came back to Maine and probably used out the rest of its life, and now it is suffering from the standard Land Rover rust and lack of repair. So when we get time to do it, it'll come into the shop and it'll be completely refurbished and drive out just like the day it did out of the factory. Maybe even modernized a little bit so somebody can use it every day. One of the unusual features of this vehicle, and one of the reasons we know it actually started off life in Canada, is that the vehicle has what they call one-piece doors. Usually a Land Rover has a split right here where you can unbolt the door top behind this panel, 2 bolts, and the door top comes off for either no top use, soft top use, or replacing the part. These were a rare model. I guess they were just delivered in Canada is what I've been told. And this is fully welded, and the whole door, the steel framework for the door is one piece on both sides. It's not boltable, so that is one of the rarities of this vehicle. One of the more unusual vehicles that we have here that is slated for restoration, this is actually one we're going to keep for the shop, so we'll do a extra special job on this one. It's a 1950, very early 1950 Series 1 80-inch. We traced the history as best we could. We know it was delivered to the British military when it was new. It's the military spec model. We can tell it's a 50 because it still has the reach-through door handles, where you reach through, no exterior door handles at all. And also has the 3 shovel-back seats. And as you can see, it's in quite a state of disrepair, but it's actually quite a rare find here in the US and actually quite valuable even in this condition because being left-hand drive and without having to convert it, the serial number says it is a factory left-hand drive, and being relatively complete, we have to strip everything, tear it right down to its last nut and bolt, remove the things that people have put on over the years and get it back into shape. It's actually a very rare find and quite possibly one of the oldest Land Rovers in the US. There are a few other ones, but when you get into the 40s and early 50s in Land Rovers in the US, you're talking a very, very, very small percentage of what is a very small market in the first place. And also has this extension that we've been told was a dealer add-on. Not quite sure about that, but it is a factory rear cross member that's been added to the original rear cross member. But we assume this one was probably saw service in Africa with the military, and then probably when it was released from service it was sold or donated or whatever to, looks like some sort of expedition company because they painted it this beautiful shade of green and added bars like this. There were many seats in the back when we bought it. All the trinkets like this were actually chromed. All the seat backs were chromed, the hood hardware and everything. So someone obviously spruced it up with the red vinyl upholstery and everything for their expedition company. Well, the history of the vehicle, one of the reasons we believe that it's from North Africa, one is the serial number with it being military and then the period of time where it could have gone to service in the British military. And then the plate here, we've never been able to trace it yet, and a few people that have stopped by to look at all our Rovers we have here say that most likely a North African sort of script here, but it definitely didn't come from the US.
Land Rovers have always been popular throughout New England, and about 300 miles west of East Coast Rovers, in the north of Vermont, is another company which is helping to keep many of the older Land Rovers on the road. This is Rovers North, now the largest independent supplier of Land Rover parts and accessories in America. They've customers across the continent. The company was formed in the late 1970s by Mark Latourney, a long-time Land Rover enthusiast. Initially, he had so many problems trying to find parts to fix his own vehicle, he had to scout them direct from England. As he then found so many other owners in a similar position, he turned a necessary hobby into a growing business. These days, the company have thousands of spare parts available for just about every Land Rover ever made. Although all the early vehicles which were exported to America were identical to the models sold in Britain, the US government subsequently introduced a range of new vehicle regulations that meant the Land Rovers exported to America required a number of very specific changes. Mark Latourney explains.
Beginning in 1967, Land Rover actually started building a US model to comply with EPA and DOT regulations. DOT is Department of Transportation, who first came out with lighting regulations, and it's noticeable on the back of this 1970 Land Rover here. Larger 4-inch amber directionals were fitted to the four corners of the vehicle beginning in 1968, and square reverse lights. A way to easily identify a U.S. Land Rover is they will have an identification tag on the driver's door, which actually states that they were built into compliance with Department of Transportation Federal Motor Vehicle Safety regulations. On the case of the Series 2As and Series 3 Land Rovers brought into the United States, it's pop riveted onto the rear body right below the door hatch, and it will state the actual month and year it was manufactured, well with the vehicle identification number. On this Land Rover over here is a good example of the USA marker lights that were fitted to the wings. They had a grade A reflector and a small light that came on with your side lights and headlights. That's fitted from 1970 on. On the front, again, you can see the large 4-inch amber lens, which is slightly lower and a lot larger than what would be used in Europe for the directional light. Beginning in 1969, Land Rover, actually 1968, most were sold as a 1969 model, Land Rover went to a dual power brake system. Dual meaning a dual circuitry. They divided the rear brakes from the front brakes, so if one axle failed, you still had the other axle to brake on, and a power servo system. This was fitted from all vehicles manufactured in 1968 on to 1974 when they ended production for the United States. Here on this engine, if you look, you can see some Environmental Protection Agency requirements, or EPA. We have a sealed fuel system or charcoal canister breather system. Most Land Rovers, the fuel system is vented at the filler cap. In the US models, the filler cap is sealed. The fumes go into a collection tank and are drawn back into the engine through the carburetor after passing through a charcoal filter. They also use a positive crankcase ventilation system or a PCV system fitted to the vehicles from 1968 onwards that prevents engine fumes from venting into the atmosphere. Yet another feature is the anti-burst door lock. The purpose of this door latch system is, in the event of an accident, it won't come ajar or spring open unintentionally. So you can see a much different form of latch than was available on the European models. This is the earlier version, which was produced from 1969 through 1971.
Rovers North is not just a parts and accessory centre. They also have built their own commercial off-road course on the site of a former skiing trail. The chief instructor is Englishman Mike Hopwood.
We've had people as far away as Texas and California, people from Ontario, Quebec, all over North America. First of all, we look for a Land Rover enthusiast because the majority of people that come to the school, they're not just after after learning experience. They're after a whole Land Rover experience. They want to know more about the vehicle. We created this course ourselves. There were a few old ski trails on which we based the trails that we use, but as far as making them suitable for vehicles to move around, we put everything in place, and as you'll see later on, we have a purpose-built obstacle area that is very good for training purposes. This is one of the practice hills where they'll learn how to get the maximum traction from the vehicle and learn how to do felled hill climbs. We're now approaching one of the many old logging bridges on the course. The vehicle at this point should be in first gear, low range, to ensure that it's thoroughly under control as you cross a bridge, making sure not to slide off either side.
There are off-road courses all across America, but there's one state which probably attracts more off-road enthusiasts than any other: Colorado, dominated by the imposing Rocky Mountains. This is Breckenridge, the location for one of the recent meetings. But this year, the 5-day event is being held in the affluent resort town of Crested Butte, about a 6-hour drive from the state capital of Denver. Every August, many of the country's most die-hard of owners make the long journey to attend the summer gathering of the aptly named Solihull Society. This is the biggest Land Rover club in the state and one of the largest in America. It's early morning, and the owners are preparing for a long hike up one of the toughest trails in the region. The leader is Bill Burke. He's a professional off-road guide, former US Camel Trophy competitor, and one of the best-known Land Rover owners in America. There are few other people who have such an in-depth knowledge of Colorado's many mountainous trails.
With four-wheeling, what happened was with work and all that, I didn't have time to actually do the hiking and climbing that I'd really like to do. You work 6 or 7 days a week, and you have to spend 4 hours hiking into a spot when now you can drive 15 or 20 minutes for 2 or 3 miles and use it. So I've become really used to four-wheeling, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. Got into it basically from that aspect that it afforded me a chance to go further than most people into a wild area and set up a base camp, and you get the cooler and the lawn chair and the big tent that you can set up. And really that's how I get into four-wheeling. Is I guess basically I'm getting lazy in my old age. I think the pleasures are that you get out into these wild lands and you can follow these little 2 tracks, see the beautiful flowers, the yarrow, the mountain yarrow, the old men in the mountains and the peonies and whatever. It's just fantastic. Animals, you see elk, moose, deer. I think that's probably the best part of it. A lot of people like the challenge of four-wheeling out here. High altitude being one. Some of the passes are very rough and rocky, and you'll encounter these alpine meadows where the trail goes through, and there's some deep mud bog. Those are fun. A good aspect of it is that some of these trails or these roads, these four-wheel drive roads, go for 25 to 30 miles at a stretch. And I think that's the most fun part of the whole thing. The people that sign up for any of my trips or classes, they actually come from, well, I've had clients from all over the world. Most of them, though, I do get mostly from the Rocky Mountain area, like this trail. It's 25 miles or so, and not see maybe one other vehicle. There's trails in Colorado that you could do for 4 days and see 1 or 2 other vehicles, but you wouldn't go through any towns or any cities. It's actually quite remote. You'll find that in Utah, Arizona, parts of New Mexico, and of course Wyoming and Montana. Very vast places, just It's just fantastic. You come out and it literally the stars are right on top of you, and you don't have to worry about the city lights thinning out the light of the stars. It's pretty awesome, actually.
The hot summer weather means most of the trails here are bone dry, with the large boulders providing the Land Rovers with the biggest challenge. Most owners familiar with the area have learnt the necessary off-road skills to ascend the course with ease. Some scamper over the rocks and boulders like ants dancing around a leafy garden. Some owners, though, are not quite as experienced and need a little help and encouragement.
There's a couple of Jeeps back there. Are there? Come right up it. There you go. Come with me. Stay with it. Come right up it now. Now that'd be the first gear. Come right up it. There you go.
Several hours later, and all the Land Rovers have arrived at the summit. Here, in an almost lunar-like landscape more than 10,000 feet above sea level, the chilly conditions mean virtually no vegetation.
I never get bored of it. I never get tired of it. On occasion, I need a little me time, where I just sit around the campfire. But how do you get bored with all this? I enjoy what I do. I've been doing it for a long time. You meet all these great, interesting people from all over the United States and all over the world, and you come up here and you breathe the fresh air, you see the flowers. It's just fantastic. So I can't say that I've ever been, and I don't think I'll ever get bored with it.
Of course, a few drivers are determined to go just a little bit further, but the soft snow puts the brakes on even the most adventurous. Still, if you can't go far going forwards, why not try and reverse? Finally, after a few breakdowns and minor scratches during the descent, every vehicle is returned safely to base. For the owners, the reward is a hearty outdoor supper. Here, everyone dresses appropriately. This is the time to relax and reflect on the day's adventures. Tomorrow, another day and another trail.
Hey, you haven't even been up filming it.
While Colorado has some of the toughest off-road trails in America, it's the Golden State of California which has probably the most eclectic range of landscapes. Ever since the 1950s, there have been Land Rover enthusiasts here, especially in some of the more wild, remote areas. But these days, there are many more of the newer models on the roads than the older workhorses from the past. Many of California's Land Rover enthusiasts have been well served over the years by British Pacific, a dedicated Land Rover parts and accessory supplier based just a few miles from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. These days, the company is run by Steve Headkey, a long-time British car enthusiast. Even though they're more than 7,000 miles from the Land Rover factory, the company still stock a huge inventory of spare parts, everything from wheel nuts to steering wheels and brackets to hoses. They also carry a myriad of gifts and accessories.
Of course, our customers expect us to carry more than just the parts to keep the vehicles running. We also carry t-shirts and hats, videotapes, pins, books, magazines, anything with the Land Rover logo in it or on it, we try to stock for these guys. As a matter of fact, not only is there a demand, but it keeps growing. We have something like 14 or 15 different styles of t-shirts in right now that we can't keep in stock. Seems like everything new that comes out with the Land Rover logo is going to be snapped up real quickly. Our customers are scattered all over the United States. Certainly we'd have a good shot of them here in California, where the vehicles have survived in pretty good numbers. And the vehicles tended to stay pretty much where they were brought into their port of entry. So they tend to congregate on the coasts of the United States. In the middle part of the country, they're pretty thin. Our customers are a diverse bunch. While certainly the Range Rover owners tend to congregate in places like Beverly Hills and West Los Angeles, the crusty old curmudgeons that have owned their series trucks for 20, 30 years are out in the desert with 2 or 3 of them, fixing them as cheaply as possible, and have completely missed the point that these have become valuable collector's items over the years. In terms of the history of Land Rover, the people with the traditional trucks, the series trucks, are very well versed on Land Rover lore and the history of the vehicle. The people who have the new trucks haven't a clue, and if somebody in a new Range Rover pulls up next to a series truck, they won't know that it's a Land Rover, won't wave or acknowledge. Sometimes Discovery people will, and certainly Defender people know. So there's really 4 levels of Land Rover owner. There's the guys with the series trucks and the Defenders. The Defender people seem to have the same sort of mindset about the vehicles as the early truck owners do. The Discovery people, where a few of them know the history, and the Range Rover people, where it's strictly a status vehicle and they have no clue as what a Land Rover is. In fact, Range Rovers were sold in the United States for a long time as Range Rover of North America without the Land Rover badging, and they're still fighting that. People still to this day do not know that a Range Rover is made by Land Rover as opposed to vice versa.
Although many of today's Californian Land Rover owners opt for the newer models, there's still a hardy band of loyal enthusiasts who tackle the notorious scorching summer heat and endless traffic jams here in the older vehicles. Typical is Hollywood animation artist Karen Ann Anderson.
Driving in LA is pretty hard in a Land Rover. They don't spend any money on the roads. Some of these roads could swallow a smaller car. I worked in Santa Monica for a while, and it was an hour commute with go 10 feet, then stop. Go 10 feet, then stop. And I think it takes 15 to 20 pounds of pressure to push my clutch down. And I noticed my left thigh getting an awful lot bigger. And no power steering makes parallel parking a lot of fun. My upper body strength has increased dramatically since owning the Land Rover. I probably carry hay bales around in each hand. I've had people chase me down the road and catch up to me at a stop sign or a stoplight and ask me if my car is for sale. Or ask me how much my car is, where'd I get my car? And I can tell them where to find another one, but if they offer me any money, I just say it's not for sale. When I'm driving down the road and I see another Land Rover, we all honk at each other and we wave. We're like the Land Rover Club. Hey, Land Rover, look. We all look at each other going, have I seen you at a meet before? Or, gee, I wonder where you got that car? Or, nice tires? Or, what year is that? And we all have this little camaraderie, this brotherhood of Land Rover owners. We all understand. We look at each other and go, he's a Land Rover owner. He's got a fire extinguisher and a bunch of tools under his seat. I've put so much into this car already. I know all its quirks. And it's making a sound, and I talk to it. It's Sydney. What are you doing, Sydney? What's that sound, Sydney? Come on, Sydney, you can do it. Don't break down, Sydney. It's a pet. It's part of the family. It's mixed, the reactions I get. Little kids ask me if I was in the Army, and teenagers, surfers all look at me and they're like, cool. Where's your surfboard? And then any kind of antique car buff just smiles and says, oh, nice Land Rover, what year is it? They all want to know what year it is. I should have had the year put on my license plate so I wouldn't have to shout it out at every stop sign. But yeah, the reactions are kind of mixed and nice. I like it. I like the attention.
California is also the location for one of the best-known working Land Rovers in America. This is Newport Beach, Southern California. Here, every summer, hundreds of bathers and beachgoers adorn the Golden Sands. They're protected by a posse of lifeguards who patrol the beach in a number of specialist off-road vehicles. One of them is a bright yellow Defender 90, which has been supplied by Land Rover themselves.
Oh, these Land Rovers stand out. Everyone notices them. Most people that ask, some ask, what is it? When do the lifeguards get those? How do I get one? How do you like it? And we're always extremely positive. This is one of the best vehicles out here. It's a privilege to be able to work in this one. This vehicle can be driving anywhere in Newport, primarily on the beach. We can be responding to a medical emergency, rescue in the water. We could respond to some emergencies on the street as well. The fire department sometimes will call us to respond with our medical training up onto the streets for traffic accidents. There's a boardwalk that runs along the homes.
You guys had already paddled and
Right.
stuff.
I was probably gone by then.
So you didn't make it to the
On a bad day, we probably would be involved with several possible broken necks. We could have multiple rescues if we had big surf and strong currents. We could be directly involved in probably 60 to 70 water-related rescues up and down the beach. Each of these towers, each of the stations here on the beach, can be responding to 30 to 60 rescues in one day.
Another state where Land Rovers are popular is the tropical island of Hawaii, more than 2,000 miles off the Californian coast. The remote beaches and wild outback here mean Land Rovers and other four-wheel drive vehicles are especially important.
I have a Land Rover in Hawaii because I want to be different than everybody else. Everybody over here has some sort of an American vehicle or a Japanese vehicle, which is real popular. And you don't see too many British cars around, and the Land Rover group is pretty select. We have very few guys that still keep one of these running. I think the best thing about owning a Land Rover is the fact that it'll pretty much take you anywhere you want to go. It's slow, and it's dusty, and it's drafty, and it leaks when it rains, but it's got character that something with air conditioning and all the modern conveniences just doesn't have. The stuff we drive through over here locally in Hawaii ranges everywhere from running on sand down at the beach to a lot of lava rocks, which you find mostly on the Big Island. Excellent traction, but it just cuts your tires to ribbons. And then on Oahu, most of what we get is dirt and mud, a lot of clay, and during the winter time, it's pretty much gets hard to traverse, but lots of fun. The group that I four-wheel around with here, we try to go out and do something with our trucks at least once a month. As a group, it might be anywhere from 2 trucks up to 4 or 5 trucks on a really big outing. Most of the 3-day weekends that we have, we'll almost always do something. I think Hawaii is mostly only known for beach scenery. I don't think the vast majority of people that get to the islands on a vacation ever manage to get out here in the woods and find out that we do have woods too, as well as beaches and waves.
One of the main drawbacks of being an enthusiast in paradise is the huge amount of travelling required to get to the main shows on the mainland. Undeterred, Hawaii's Land Rover owners create their own fun in the lush green rainforests high up in the mountains. There's enough mud and mountains on Hawaii's assorted islands to keep any enthusiast happy 12 months a year. These trails are certainly not for the novice.
Hey, it's deep over there.
Here, getting stuck in the mud is almost an everyday occurrence. It's getting out which is the real test. Some of these remote mountain trails are almost constantly underwater, and even for those used to the conditions, there can still be a few surprises. The only solution is having a winch and a few patient colleagues around. Plenty of spare time is also recommended.
Watch the water come out of the door.
It looks
the old
like
blues can of WD-40.
It looks like it was stuck in there real well. What could be finer than to be here in Hawaii, paradise, come up here in middle of the woods, drink a beer with your friends, and drive your Land Rover. Anybody can have a Jeep.
Stay there. Okay.
Back on the mainland, there are thousands of individual enthusiasts who keep the Land Rover flag flying. But while most live in the big cities on the east and west coasts, there are still devoted owners in some of the most isolated of places. In fact, in southern Kansas, deep in the American heartland, is one of the most dedicated Land Rover enthusiasts of all. This is Bill Bruce, in his rare Range Rover convertible.
This is a 1981 Range Rover two-door convertible. It's unique in the fact that it is a custom conversion, that they've actually put a hydraulically operated roof on the back. I actually acquired this vehicle in Aspen, Colorado a little over a year ago. It's fairly unusual here, being located here in Wichita. People just aren't accustomed to these types of vehicles at all here in the Midwest. They typically get them confused either for a Jeep or for a Toyota Land Cruiser of some sort. Here in the town that I live in, our closest dealer was 500 some miles, which made it tough for us with our series vehicles especially to get any type of service work done at all. We typically would try to get it done locally, which was a real challenge, or take the thing out to Denver, Colorado, which was 500 miles from here for authorized service work. We could drive, typically I'd drive for way over a year and probably not ever see another one. And that's on a daily basis. I drive these things daily, and that gives you an idea how far and few between they were, particularly here in the Midwest.
But this is just the start of his Land Rover interest. His backyard is almost a shrine to Land Rover's history.
My plans for these two especially are to take the two to make one good one. As Land Rovers typically go, one of them has a bad frame, one's got a good frame, and the body panels are interchangeable. This is a 1951 model, which, like I said, there are very few of. I don't know the full history on the thing, This one happened to have come out of northwestern Nebraska, which distance-wise is about 400 some miles from here. And again, it came out of the Midwest. Past that, I don't really know much about them other than the fact that it's original and complete. You pretty well got to take them the way you can find them. That's true of almost all Land Rovers here in the States. But the instrument panel's complete. It's had a few things added onto it. But like I said, again, you pretty well really got to take these the way you can find them just due to the scarcity of the things. In the back here are 3 other vehicles. This happens to be a 67 109, which is a North American dollar model. Originally set up with a 6-cylinder, which for Land Rover people is fairly scarce. This one's been retrofitted back to a 4, which in this country is a preference because the parts and availability of the 6-cylinder models is fairly high and the prices are fairly dear. This one is a Series 1 model pickup, which is a 107. It's a 1956 model. And again, just happens to be here in the United States, gives some scarcity to it. The neat thing about this one was it spent its almost entire life in the state of Oregon. When I bought the thing, it came with a logbook that chronologically listed almost every owner on the car since the time it was delivered new. This is a 1957 107 station wagon, which I understand in the UK are extremely scarce due to the fact that most of them were exported. Again, though, not necessarily the United States, but to Commonwealth countries. These 2 models particularly are relatively scarce here in the United States. All Series 1s, for the most part, are very far and few between here in the United States. This happens to be a 1947 Willys CJ2A. It's in exceptionally nice original condition. I bought it earlier this year, mainly for the reason that it has a long heritage with the original Land Rover, which is most Land Rover owners know this is what they duplicated after the war. The Wilkes brothers got a hold of one of these, dissected the thing, substituted aluminum for steel, basically took a Rover car motor and put it in place of the Willys 4-cylinder. And to me, it's more of an evolutionary vehicle with the Land Rover connection, with quite a bit of historical significance in the fact that it's basically the vehicle that started the whole 4-wheel drive move, Land Rover or otherwise.
Bill's passion goes further. Inside his home, he's just about every book, memento, and piece of advertising literature the company has ever produced. But his pride and joy is the magnificent Land Rover model collection that he's accumulated over the last 20 years. He has models of just about every Land Rover ever made. The oldest dates from the start of the 1950s, when the early vehicles were arriving in the showrooms. And while most of these models are made in Britain, there are also individual pieces here from Germany, Japan, Holland, Australia, France, as well as America. The collection is perhaps most amazing in that very few of these models are available in any local stores. Instead, most have been scouted from across the world. Despite the company's success in recent years, Land Rover's popularity was very limited when the vehicles were launched here. This early press review referred to their jouncing qualities. During the 1950s, the Jeep was by far and away the most popular 4-wheel drive vehicle in the country.
The Ridge Runners are on the prowl. At Yakima, Washington, the unique outfit of modern-day Rough Riders heeds the call of spring and takes to the hills. They run the ridges and ford the streams, and if the fish are biting after this, it'll be a miracle. But it's Jeep year, and the fish can wait. The Ridge Runners take a trout stream in stride and head for the tall timber, which is rough on life and limb. Woe betide the poor bloke who's stuck like a pig in a poke in a wallow. What the others do to him is hard to swallow. But they're all brothers under the skin. Mudslinging in an election year is quite the vogue. So is kissing babies. Combine the two and jeepers creepers.
But Land Rover began to fight back, and in the late 1950s, the latest models were regularly featured at the New York auto shows. In the late 1950s and early 60s, the vehicles were often marketed alongside many of the more popular British cars being exported to America at the time, such as MGs, Triumphs, and Austin Healey's. Large press days were held at major racetracks so that journalists could drive a number of the cars on the same day, with the hope that they would write a number of positive articles. Here at the Lime Rock racetrack in Connecticut, a Land Rover waits for a test drive alongside a new E-Type Jaguar. America's obsession with motorhomes meant that it was almost inevitable Land Rovers would be transformed into mobile homes. They were given such glamorous names as Dreamer and Adventurer, although very few were sold and fewer still survive. Most of the Americans who did buy Land Rovers in the 1960s generally kept them for a number of years. In fact, some are still driving them. This is Derek Reed from Stowe in Vermont.
First Land Rover I purchased was in 1962. I was in to see the Rolls-Royce Bentley dealer for some parts, some spares, and the vehicle, he had just picked up the franchise and the car was sitting in his showroom. I looked at it, I looked at the ruggedness of it, the build, the transfer case, and the four-wheel drive ability of it, and I don't think I even test drove it. I think I just said, please prep it and I'll take it. It's exactly what I was looking for. It far outperformed anything on the Jeep, and mind you, with the tires, the off-road tires and so on, that helped, but it was a far superior vehicle to anything that the Jeep could put out. I said the reason I bought a Land Rover is because I had a Jeep.
Also in New England, Bill Vallerand. He saw his first Land Rover while on a tour of duty in Korea in the 1950s. Once he returned to the US, he started buying as many vehicles as he could find. Many of them are now just rusting around his New England ranch.
The Land Rover was more plush than the Jeep was, of all things, which we were driving the M38, the old World War II ones, and the Land Rovers were, well, I thought they were a better looking vehicle. I liked them much better. I really enjoyed them. I got a chance to drive them, and we played around with them, and we had a good time. And I told myself figured I would get a Land Rover at some point in time. Probably owned well over 100. I have no idea actual count. Actual ones that I've run on the road myself as runners, as everyday vehicles, is probably a dozen different ones. One I ran the most, I think, I had a 1971 109 European low compression 6-cylinder that I put on probably 300 to 350,000 miles on it. In the 1960s, the Rovers weren't that popular. There weren't that many around. When you saw one, it was when you ran into another one in a parking lot, you always had to stop and talk. How the wheels were running or what was going on, but we just have to stop and talk and look over each other's vehicles. This is probably one of my most favorite vehicles. It's the 109 Series 2A forward control. Very few of them in the United States, so I understand anyway. I've only ran into a couple of other ones. It was originally bought brand new in Dutch Guiana, which is currently Suriname, and it was bought by the International Society for the Protection of Animals, and this is Operation Guamba, which Guamba means animal. And since it's been in my custody, around here it's known as Guamba. But I understand from John Walsh, who bought it and used it in Suriname, when it was down there, its name was Daisy, which they thought it was such an ugly truck that they had to give it a nice name, so they named it Daisy.
Advertising budgets in the olden days were tiny by comparison to today's multi-million standards. As such, every novel, low-cost marketing idea had to be exploited. A typical idea is this mural on a dealer's wall showing the Land Rover's versatility. It was simple and cheap, but very effective. Another low-cost, eye-catching idea was to promote the virtues of Land Rovers in the jungle, but this time using the theme of the urban jungle of New York rather than the African bush. Humorous advertising was seen as the most effective way of attracting interest in the vehicles.
Somebody once said, you know, people read what they like and sometimes it's an ad, so you had to make ads that they might like. And we tried to find things that were interesting topics of the time and that would catch people's imagination, and then use Land Rovers to promote those. I mean, for instance, when somebody used a Land Rover as the getaway car in the Great Train Robbery, that was just marvelous grist for our mill, and we went to town on it. The Great Train Robbery and those various things caught people's imaginations tremendously, and we had this line that we used all over the place about how Land Rovers were used by, I can't remember the numbers anymore, but 36 armies and 52 police forces all over the world, and somehow that intrigues people. We never told lies about anything. We always told the truth, but we often had tongue-in-cheek stories. We ran an ad one time about how you should really buy a Land Rover if you lived in a place where there was lots of snow, because you could always find it in a snowbank. And we had one with an opera lamp stuck up on the top of it, and we said that you could buy opera lamps in various colors, and you ought to know your own color and stick it on the top of your Land Rover, and then when you lost it in a snowbank, you'd be able to find your Land Rover. That was fun. We used to do all sorts of things that would stretch our budget. We ran an ad that featured a Land Rover on which we had put a wicker covering over the middle of the body part, and we put bud vases in it and an opera lamp, and we upholstered it beautifully and made it look like a limousine, and people were intrigued by all that. Somebody in a former administration once said to us that the wrong kinds of people were buying Rovers, and our attitude was that anybody with the price of one was the right kind of person.
These days, magazine advertising still forms a prominent part of the company's promotional strategy, but television is far more reaching.
I see a lake with a waterfall and little whitecaps shaped by the breeze.
There's a hotel.
And hundreds of air-conditioned rooms.
And minibars, no doubt.
Look, a Range Rover.
Ah, yes. A 4.0 SE. And a smashing woman giving caviar to that chap.
I see an igloo.
Yes.
Land Rover Discoveries frequently come home slightly more soiled than ordinary cars. But they still get washed exactly the same way. With soap and water.
The Land Rover Discovery can take you just about anywhere in the world. So do pay attention.
Surprisingly, the Range Rover can trace some of its roots back to America. This is Golden Rod, a Land Rover which was vastly modified by one of the company's principal engineers in America in the mid-1960s. Significantly, a powerful Oldsmobile aluminium V8 engine was placed under the bonnet, and after a number of other modifications, the vehicle was returned to Britain for testing. The results were highly impressive.
Goldenrod was related to the Range Rovers in several ways. Number one, it identified using an American V8 engine in such a vehicle. That was the first time that had been done. Secondly, it really identified that a luxurious four-wheel drive, sport utility type vehicle had terrific market potential in America.
Unquestionably, it is the Range Rover which has led the company's recent revival in America, and one of the biggest single markets of all is New York City. There are now hundreds of Range Rovers on Manhattan's crowded streets, but few owners are as devoted as Suzanne Samuelson.
People, talk about the stress of driving in this city and how horrible it is, and the cabs and this, and how the driver, it brings out the worst in people. I do agree with that. Somehow, just driving around in my Range Rover, I feel really comfortable. The car handles so well that, I feel I can dodge in and out when I want to. And it's almost like a therapeutic kind of thing. I mean, sometimes I'll even go, just take a little ride, take a ride, to cool off or whatever, just because it's so relaxing. One of the reasons we decided on it was exactly because we wanted to go off-road. But then I suddenly realized it was what I would call the perfect urban assault vehicle. I mean, we're in Pothole City here, no problem. Makes the car very happy, actually, to go through the potholes. And just in terms of maneuvering around the city, it gives you a very secure feeling. If a taxi driver curses at me or is honking up a storm or shaking his whatever at me, somehow it doesn't faze me. I feel like maybe, once in a while I'll get provoked and yell back, but it doesn't bother me. I just kind of laugh at them and just go about my business. When I'm driving around, I do like sort of, car spotting, looking for Land Rovers, Range Rovers, and if I'm driving, with my husband in the vehicle, we'll usually call them out to each other. I guess it sounds a little tacky, but we do. And it's sometimes, if we're walking, we'll definitely, if we see one parked, we'll go and kind of look at it and see what year is this, and did they do anything special with their accessories, etc. And we're always curious if it's a newer vehicle that still has the dealer imprint on the plate. We'll be curious to see where they purchased it. The seating position is really a plus. It makes you really have that vantage point over the traffic. I don't want to say that you're looking down on everyone, but as one of my friends actually said when we were first showing off the car to her, she said, "Suzanne, this is a wonderful vehicle for touring. I really like this. It should have a guest book."
One of the reasons Land Rover has achieved so much success in America in recent years is thanks to the innovative ways it's sold its vehicles. All across the USA, dealerships have undergone such major transformations. Many now look more like exotic off-road centers than traditional car sales rooms. One of the most successful dealers is in Thousand Oaks, California. Here, there are many reminders of the company's illustrious past in Africa. The idea is to push the message that a vehicle that can cope with the toughest terrain of the African hinterland will be equally at home in the urban jungles of the American metropolis. The biggest attraction of these new dealerships is the on-site off-road course. Here, potential buyers can gain hands-on experience of exactly how the vehicle will perform over rough terrain, but without having to drive to the distant outback.
Going up a nice little steep hill here. We're going to crest off and then we'll have a descend. So it's just to whet the appetite of a new Land Rover owner. Give them the full experience. It's not just a car to drive around town, but to actually take off-road and use off-road. And that's what we give them a taste here. And we also have wheels events where we take them off on long road trips. But this pretty much sells the customer on what this vehicle can do for us and for them. We've got some more articulation here with some railroad tracks that we're going over. A nice little sweet taste of what we have here to offer.
The recent upsurge in interest in the Land Rover name means the American military now has its own fleet of Land Rovers. The US Army's Special Operations Command ordered more than 80 specially modified Land Rovers directly from the factory in England in the early 1990s. The vehicles have been specially equipped for rapid response purposes. This means they can be deployed anywhere in the world with just 11 hours' notice. But the American military have certainly been aware of the capabilities of the British four-wheel drive vehicle for a long time. This is a film shot by the US Air Force of British troops using Land Rovers in Burma at the end of the 1950s. Of course, British and American troops have worked on many joint manoeuvres since then, when Land Rovers have been heavily featured. Way back in 1942, the US Army brought a predecessor of the military Land Rover to America, the British-made Daimler Scout car. The strange-shaped vehicle was put through its paces on this primitive off-road course at the Aberdeen testing grounds in Maryland. This film was made to assess the performance of the vehicle over the rough terrain. But despite the effortless way it seemed to negotiate the course, there were no orders. Across America, there are many types of Land Rovers which have been modified. Here, outside Los Angeles, is a series vehicle where the grille can be quickly turned into a summer barbecue. In the Colorado Rockies, many vehicles have ski racks. But there are many other vehicles which have been modified for art and functionality. And in the smart resort of Aspen, Colorado, is one of the most unusual. Aspen now has one of the largest single concentration of Range Rovers in America. And perhaps not surprisingly, there are also many stretched limos here. So, enterprising entrepreneur Todd Miller had the idea of designing a stretched Range Rover, a vehicle with all the comforts of any regular stretched limo, but with the proven qualities of the best 4x4 in the world.
The whole theory behind having the four-wheel drive limousine, the Range Rover, as opposed to the Lincoln or whatever, is the four-wheel drive safety of the stretch. When it actually performs better on a highway at high speed as opposed to a regular Range Rover, because of the extra length and the weight, it tracks much better. It actually is a safer vehicle. A standard Range Rover, you're not going to be able to sit 6 people comfortably on a long trip. We drive people from Aspen to Denver in a blizzard, so to speak. That could take 4 or 5 hours. Some of the features we added, we've stretched this vehicle 63 inches. Also, we've extended the doors about 8 inches, which makes it easier to access the interior of the vehicle. You have color television, video cassette player, bar, fully stocked, disc changer, cassette stereo, sunroof in the back, we've added accent lighting, privacy divider wall between the driver and the passenger compartment, intercom to the front to the driver. They have vanity mirrors to make sure they're looking beautiful when they step out. Your basic limousine appointments. I've had several requests from clients that have ridden in it that are ready to write me a check on the spot. So far we haven't sold it to anyone. It's not really for sale, but everything's for sale for the right price, if you know what I mean.
There's another highly modified Land Rover in the heart of Pennsylvania, an old Series 1 with a wooden body. It was made in England, but restored in America by the current owner, Scott Miller, in the mid-1970s.
Oh, it gets a pretty good reaction. I don't show it that often. I've only had it to maybe 3 shows. It's just sort of a keepsake for me. I like it. I've had it for 20 years, and I plan on keeping it forever. A shooting brake is what they call them, and basically they would load up their horses in the trailer, and they go to the next estate to go fox hunting. I was coming down a one-way street one day, which is separated by a railroad, and I looked over on the other side and I saw this thing coming, and I knew it was a Land Rover, but I'd never seen such a thing. So I had a Series 2A, and when I set that out for sale at our business, the owner of this saw it, so he stopped in just to chat about Land Rovers, and turned out that he was telling me about this one. I said, yeah, I've seen it. I said, well, if you're ever interested in selling it, let me know. And about 2 years later, apparently a short time afterwards, he ran it low on oil, seized the bearing, he put it in the barn, and about 2 years later he was cleaning out the barn. He contacted me about purchasing it, and I purchased it for $500. I had a deal with him. He still had a friend in England that was in the automotive business, and I made a deal with him that he'd get me the parts if I bought it from him. So he got me mostly everything I needed. We completely dismantled the engine. We had the crankshaft welded up and turned back down, so that was repaired. It's probably the best starting vehicle I have. It can sit there in the garage for 2 or 3 months, and you go in and hit the starter and it pops right off. It has the old F-style engine, what they call an F-head. It's fine in low range. High range on the highway, it's underpowered. 50 mile an hour, it's screaming. But as far as comfort, it's probably the smoothest riding series vehicle I ever rode in because of the weight of the body, and they put extra leaves in the springs. It's definitely different looking going down the street. It does get a reaction from people.
Another personally modified Land Rover is this Defender 90 belonging to Konrad Omansky. He believes a vehicle should reflect the personality of its owner. Art and aesthetics are as important as power and performance.
To me, the essence of automotive ownership is involvement. I wanted a sports car, but I live here in the hills of Vermont, and on a dirt road, it's not an option. This is my Vermont sports car. It is involvement, and it's eminently practical. The four-wheel off-road capabilities are not to be questioned on this vehicle, so to me, performance on the highway was most important and critical. And so what I did was I tried to personalize it as well based on aesthetics and performance. For example, the front A-bar, wanting to preserve the architecture, the natural architecture of the vehicle without adding a huge bull bar. I used a simple A-bar. I got professional lighting from PIA so that I could have driving and fog capabilities for my over-the-road. I got European beamed Hella replacement headlights for improved lighting performance. I used the grille guards for both protection and again to balance off what I established here in the front. The front mud flaps were genuine part that were added to keep the dirt and mud from affecting the side of the vehicle. The side runners, again a genuine part, added for ease of ingress and egress. Aesthetically, there are some things I did strictly for aesthetics. The Land Rover emblem I added here to break up this large panel of paint here, which is the B-pillar, and that's strictly an aesthetic item. This is a work in progress. There will be a full Brown Church roof rack, and in the meantime I started with this Brown Church roof ladder over here. These mud flaps, which one might say is cosmetic, actually do enhance performance because they keep the rear of the vehicle eminently clean. And these had to be engineered in the bracketry here by Rovers North. And I chose to add a cover here to just carry through the Land Rover identification. And this speaks for itself. So since comfort over the road is so important to me, I wanted to make this all the contact surfaces of the finest quality I could find and ergonomically functional. For example, the steering wheel is of a reduced diameter. It gives me more clearance for my arm between the window and the steering wheel itself. It's ergonomically correct, and the material is Italian glove leather. I've also replaced the shifter with a Momo carbon shadow shifter, as it's called. It's much more ergonomically comfortable, and it's akin to a doorknob in a house where you're touching that all the time. The biggest change of all in the soundproofing. There's significantly less decibels in this than the stock vehicle because of all the soundproofing I've put in, as you can hear by the revving of the engine. Under load, it's quiet in here.
About 30 miles outside New York City is yet another highly modified Land Rover, now attracting considerable attention. This is one of the very few Bigfoot Land Rovers in America, this one having taken 15 years to complete. The owner of this blue moving mountain is Anthony Schiavone, who combined his lifelong love of Land Rovers with his interest in big wheels and all-purpose transportation. The result of his efforts means he now has a vehicle which towers above the rest of the local traffic, and at the same time gives him a majestic view of the road ahead. Apart from the giant 44-inch tires, the vehicle has also been fitted with a Jaguar power steering pump, a new rear axle, as well as a shining aluminium interior. But this is not just a road and show car. It's the ultimate off-road Land Rover. How many standard models can scamper over sandy dunes so easily?
I drive down the road and there are little kids, they come flying out of the house, you know, and put their thumbs up and they get crazy. That's fun.
Okay, this is what I did underneath. As you can see, there's an axle truss made up of a 1-inch bar welded together with the blocks that clamp into the axle. Those blocks are milled out of a 6x6x6 cube of aluminum, machined on a big CNC milling machine, which I did. That took me about 3 months just to make those blocks. If you could look up here by the gas tank, I made dual gas tanks for it, and those also were profiled on a CNC machine designed on a CAD/CAM system, which took me about 2 months also to build. Aside from, I put late model mirrors and door hinges and changed the locks around. I put because it's very difficult to check the oil in this vehicle because there's not too many places to stand unless you stand on the tire, and then you're getting hit in the head with the hood. So I decided to make a tilt nose. At the time I bought these tires, I paid, I think, $310 each. The Dick C-Pecs, they're 44 inches in diameter. I think they're like 18 inches wide. And I had the rims custom made, because you can buy rims for Ford and Chevy and all that, but I had these rims made by a guy in the Midwest. This is what I did inside. I took all of the remaining dashboard pieces and polished them, and then I made a few new ones and also polished them. This is going to be a radio area. That's not complete yet. I dropped the floor down 3 inches because I raised the body up 3 inches. It seems to be very popular now in the street rod and custom car public in the States. Everyone is building things out of billet and aluminum. That's why I wanted to build things or billet specifically for Land Rovers.
But after so much effort transforming the vehicle, was it worth it?
I've lost many girlfriends, a lot of money, and probably 15 years of my life. But now I could say maybe it's worth it.
It's doubtful there are many Land Rovers in the world which have been as heavily modified as that owned by Herb Zipkin of Mount Cisco, New York, for more than half his life. In 1959, he decided to fulfill a dream of driving a Land Rover around Africa for 6 months. He started by flying to Britain to purchase a brand new vehicle, which he then drove to a bus manufacturer in Germany for a range of very specific modifications. The vehicle was then driven to North Africa for the start of the amazing adventure. And to this day, the trip has never been forgotten.
Modifications come into two series. The first series was on the initial trip that I took through Africa, in the Middle East, Europe, Middle East and Africa, after I picked up the vehicle and had it modified. After that trip, which took 6 months, shipped it back to the States, and a year and a half later, took another trip around the world. And this is what I did a year and a half later, but not quite the last ones because I ended up in a war in Asia. I call that IRF, Russo-Asian Expedition, 61-62. IRF standing for I'd rather fly. It was applicable. Throughout this expedition, or both of them as a matter of fact, I would check in at the automobile club of every country. I had done a lot of advance correspondence telling them I was coming, so the welcome mat was out pretty much. And when I arrived there, they had a little ceremony and made me an honorary member of their automobile club and gave me a badge. After a while, I acquired so many badges, I didn't know what to do with it, so I had this fabricated and all the badges were mounted on there, which is very interesting, caused a lot of attention. Okay, now getting back to the vehicle itself, decided I need more carrying capacity for the water and the gas, or petrol, and had these stands, these holders fabricated, but these lights, the directional lights, were behind that, so they had to bring them up here and fabricate this housing to accommodate them. The security, I gave the lights. We have lights on either side. Now the first trip was a light in the center. The second trip were these lights, which were very important because there were certain times that we traveled at night. We see a ladder, which is a Land Rover manufactured ladder. They're magnesium, they were used for their fire engines. There's one on the other side which snapped together to form a long ladder. And the best part about these ladders is its usefulness in snow, sand, and mud. You drop it under the tires and you have traction for a short distance to get you out, and I use it frequently for that purpose. I can move it up from here and it will swing all the way to the back. Before I let it rest on the back, I'll just tell you one thing about the security where one of the firearms was kept. Since this had X amount of thickness, I had a compartment built inside that no one could really find unless they knew that it was there. And in that, I kept a revolver. I don't have my rifle here, but I carried 2 revolvers and 1 rifle. And the rifle was built into this compartment. If you notice that this compartment is shaped so that there is space behind it, which lines up with the space from the outside of the vehicle. So there's a pretty good space there. By taking these screws off, this plate comes off and I kept the rifle in there. I didn't pull it out too often, but it still was available should I need it. And then this just snapped into the back. You see in the rear of the vehicle we had to make use of every bit of space and extend the vehicle to accommodate these jerry cans. In so doing, the lights that were behind the jerry cans were brought up here, and this was fabricated. The access to all of the compartments was with a key like this, which is what the bus people use. And this was not in it. All of this was not in there until it was fabricated in there. So we have a compartment to keep the jacks and some of the heavy equipment that are required in case of emergency. In '59, I was a lot younger than I am now. I'm, 75 now. And I could handle it. I enjoyed every minute of it. If it was very easy, I would not have gotten as much enjoyment out of it. The vehicle performed excellent for me throughout all of the trips that I made. I had problems. I had a clutch changed in Africa. In eastern Turkey, I had an axle that broke, but I was able to go in front-wheel drive. And it served me well on both trips, and they were hard miles. And it just gave me a sense of comfort that this was the best decision that I could possibly have made for a vehicle to do this trip, and I would do it again.
Land Rovers have come a long way in America in recent years. From the virtual obscurity of the late 1970s and early 80s, the vehicles are now gracing highways all across the nation. Their future has never seemed so bright.
I won't go. The jungle is impenetrable. Swamps, marshes, jagged mountain ridges, icy cliffs, raging rivers, arctic winds, quicksand, dust storms, torrential rains. I stay here, but I have a Range Rover. Okay, I bring the kids.